Well, good morning. I wonder, how many of you have ever wondered about how things work or why things are the way they are? When I was little, I used to wonder how people appeared on my TV. We had big TVs back then. They were really fat. They weren't skinny like they are now. And I used to think people lived in my TV and that they performed all these plays, and because that's what I was used to. And I didn't understand how they got on my TV. I still kind of wonder how things show up on my TV. And I kind of wonder, when I send a text message to somebody or I call somebody, how does it go through the air to somebody else's phone? I don't see the words floating through the air. Do you? No, I don't know. I am sure there is someone who's really smart about those things and could explain it, but I don't know that I would still understand how that works. But I am glad that there are people who can do that. I wonder, are there some things in the Bible that are kind of hard to understand and that you kind of wonder about? Like, how did that happen? Well, our story today left the disciples really confused, and it left other people confused, and they didn't understand how things happened. They were really excited that it happened, but they were really confused. And it's this story about Jesus feeding 5,000 people. Raise your hand if you know that story. Do you know the story about Jesus feeding 5,000? Yeah. So Jesus was with a big group of people. They're guessing 5,000. And they didn't have any food. They'd been out there all day. No food. And the disciples are like, well, what are we going to do with these people? Like, they're hungry. We don't have enough money. It would take 8 months of our salary, of our money, to feed these people. And finally, a little boy comes up and he says, I have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And the disciples were like, oh, this is not going to feed 5,000 people. People, like, they're going to hardly get anything. And Jesus blesses the food, and the disciples start handing it out, and it just keeps coming and coming and coming, more and more food. And then when they were done, they had 12 extra baskets of food. How does that happen? I don't know. I'm looking around, and I see we're doing communion today. So I asked Deb, who got this all ready, I said, Deb, how many loaves of bread did you use to put in those baskets? And she said, I had 4 loaves of bread. It makes about 280 pieces. That's about enough to feed our congregation. Everybody gets, when we do communion, you get a little piece of bread. Can you imagine? 1 more loaf, so maybe we'd have 300 pieces like this, but it's going to feed 5,000 people. I don't know. I am guessing those disciples were wondering what was going on. And you know what? I don't have a way to explain that. Jesus couldn't explain it. He said it was God. Now, there are things we can explain now that are kind of mysterious, and like we don't know how they work, but someone can explain it to us. But there's a lot of things in the Bible that we just don't know. And we have to kind of learn to live with that. And we have to kind of wonder and find some joy in that, because that was a really big miracle. Our family has been watching The Chosen, and we love it. And the very last episode of the last season had this story in it. And it was amazing. The disciples, their faces, they were almost like jumping up and down because they were so excited and they had realized what Jesus could do. So, you know what? Sometimes I think it's okay not to understand. I'm a person that really likes to understand how things work and why things work. But I've kind of had to learn that it's okay to not know how or why things work sometimes. And I think that's part of the mystery of God, is that sometimes we just have to find the joy in not knowing, and it's okay. Let's say a prayer. Dear God, thank you for the miracles that you have done and continue to do. Help us to find the wonder and the joy in things that we don't understand. Amen. Right, you may go back to your seats.